All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're talking about the most fundamental instruction manual for every living thing on our planet, DNA. It's literally the blueprint that builds you, me, and pretty much everything else that's alive. So, what is this code exactly, and how does it all work? Let's crack open the book of life and find out.
So let's start with a little question. What do you, yes, you, have in common with a mushroom popping up in the forest? Or a tiny little zebrafish? Or hey, even the trillions of bacteria living in your gut right now? I mean, they seem worlds apart, don't they? But it turns out, deep down at the molecular level, we all share an incredible connection. You guessed it, the answer is DNA. It's this universal code, a shared language that connects all known life. The same basic building blocks, the same machinery. It's found everywhere, from the simplest little bacterium to the most complex animals. It's the ultimate evidence that we are all, in a very, very real sense, related. Okay, so let's go find this code. We're going to go on a journey, zooming in from the scale of a person, all the way down to the tiny molecules that actually make us who we are.
So, we'll start at the human scale. Our bodies are made of trillions of cells, and each one is like its own little bustling city. To find the master blueprint, we just need to pick one of those cities and zoom right in, past the city limits and straight to its core.
And here we are, inside the nucleus. You can think of this as the cell's main office, or maybe a high-security vault. This is where the master copy of the blueprint, the entire genetic instruction manual, is carefully stored and protected. Now that we're in the vault, we have a puffle. Get this. If you stretched out the DNA from just one of your cells, it would be about 2 meters long. So how in the world does all that information fit inside a microscopic nucleus? Well, the answer is just a masterpiece of biological engineering.
The secret is some incredible packaging. The DNA is wound up super tightly into these structures we call chromosomes. Humans have 23 pairs of them, and they're not just random messy bundles. If you look closely, you can see these unique banding patterns. They act kind of like barcodes that scientists use to tell each chromosome apart.
Now, if we take one of these chromosomes and start to gently unwind it, we finally see it, the iconic structure that's become the symbol of science itself, the double helix. This twisted ladder isn't just elegant, it's an incredibly efficient way to store information. Let's break that ladder down a bit. The sides are made of a sugar and a phosphate group, forming a backbone. The rungs are made of pairs of chemicals we call bases. And one piece of that backbone plus one base makes a single unit, a nucleotide. These nucleotides are the 4 letters of our genetic alphabet, A, T, C, and G. Now, here's the really clever part. These letters don't just pair up randomly. They follow one simple, strict rule. A always pairs with T, and C always pairs with G. It's like a perfect chemical lock and key. And this is genius because it means if you know the sequence of letters on one side of the ladder, you automatically know the sequence on the other. It's a built-in backup system, which is absolutely vital for making accurate copies of our DNA. So we have this massive code, but what does it actually do? A blueprint is pretty useless unless someone reads it and starts building something. And that's exactly what happens in our cells. The code gets read to build the actual machines of life, proteins.
A specific stretch of DNA that holds the instructions for one particular thing, like one specific protein, is called a gene. So if your whole genome is a massive cookbook, a gene is just a single recipe. And these recipes tell our cells how to build everything, from the enzymes that digest our food to the hemoglobin that carries oxygen in our blood.
This whole process of reading the recipe has a really grand name, the central dogma. It's basically a 2-step process. First, in what's called transcription, the cell makes a temporary copy of the gene using a molecule called RNA. Think of it like taking a photocopy of one recipe so you don't mess up the master cookbook. Then, in translation, the cell's machinery reads that RNA copy and actually builds the protein, piece by piece, exactly like the recipe said.
And this process has to be incredibly precise. A protein's function depends entirely on its 3D shape. And as one source puts it so well, a single change in the sequence causes a change in the way that the protein folds. One tiny typo can completely alter that shape,
and that can change or even destroy the protein's ability to do its job. Which brings us to a really critical topic. What happens when there are mistakes in the blueprint? What are the consequences of these genetic typos? An error in the DNA sequence is called a mutation. Now, I know the word mutation sounds really dramatic, but the truth is they happen constantly. Many of them have no effect whatsoever. Some can even be beneficial. But yes, others can be detrimental, causing the blueprint's instructions to go completely wrong.
And these typos aren't all the same. They can be as simple as changing a single letter in the recipe, that's an SNV. They can involve adding or removing letters, an indel, which can throw off the entire recipe from that point on. Or in some cases, you can get entire sections of the genome repeated, kind of like a paragraph in that cookbook getting copied and pasted by mistake. Let's see what this looks like in the real world. For example, a very specific mutation in a gene called FGR3, which helps regulate bone growth, is the cause of the most common form of dwarfism, known as achondroplasia. In another case, mutations in a different gene, the CFTR gene, which controls how salt and water move in our cells, well, that leads to the disorder cystic fibrosis. And mutations in the SMN gene are behind spinal muscular atrophy, because that gene is absolutely critical for keeping our motor neurons alive. In every single one of these cases, the story is the same. One small change in the blueprint leads to a profound impact on health. So let's zoom all the way back out. We've traveled from a person down to a single letter of the genetic code, and we've seen how it works. But now, it's time to appreciate the biggest picture of all. And this brings us to what is, for me, the most profound idea. The genome, that total genetic blueprint, it isn't just for humans. The same 4 letters, A, T, C, and G, and the same basic machinery for reading them are used by nearly every living thing on Earth. It is an ancient, unbroken thread connecting all of us back to the very dawn of life. We have learned to read this ancient blueprint, and now we are learning how to write it. This shared language of life doesn't just tell us where we came from. It gives us unbelievably powerful tools to shape our future. So the question that leaves us with is this: what will we choose to build? Thanks for joining us.